Okay. We'll leave the door open because people do tend to sort of
People are wandering and then they can get out as soon as they realise what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, so for those of you, there aren't many under 40 by the looks of it, so some of you may very well have heard of me. Rob Hayles, former British champion, Commonwealth Games champion, World Champion, and loads of Olympic fourths and a couple of bronzes and a silver there somewhere. Yeah, road, track, started back in the 80s when cycling was really uncool to do, which didn't go too well with my schoolmates, shaving my legs in PE classes and stuff. But yeah, and then pre-funding, obviously, 97. You know, when as a British team, our goal was to try and get a second ride in the team pursuit, for instance. And we left it to the likes of Chris Boardman to go and win the medals, and then we just kind of fill in the background. And then obviously the funding came in 97, and so I have a foot and a kind of a visual of both sides of it, and it really was kind of the making certainly of British sport, but cycling especially, obviously, without going through the history of the results. But the Manchester Velodrome just down the road and the funding were absolutely huge for us. And then I was also able to make it onto the continent as a pro on the road. And at the time there was about 4 or 5 of us. There was myself, Dave Miller at Cofidis, Roger Hammond, Charlie Regalius, Jeremy Hunt at Benesto, and that was pretty much it. Jamie Burrows was doing his stuff as well in Italy. And now the pathway is massive, and it's so good to see that the British riders are able to actually compete on a level where we just kind of thought it was guys we were watching on Channel 4 and on Eurosport doing it wherever you can see it now. I'm not sure, TNT or something.
Yeah.
Allegedly. But yeah, so I've been around quite a while, seen quite a few things. You know, was there when Graeme Obree, around his time of the hour, and then we were back there a few weeks ago when he won his world title, and he intrigued me massively. Just chatting to him in the hotel just a few days before he won that world title on Hamar, where he got the hour record on his second attempt, only I think it was about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks prior. You know, Boardman going through doing the Secret Squirrel Club, which I think we can kind of talk about now. But you know, just the development in the equipment, the bikes, the clothing, especially. So yeah, it's pretty varied. And then the commentary side, commentated for about 10 years, I think. Various events from Worlds, Olympics. I mean, it was on trackside for 2012 in London. Incredible. Paris-Roubaix, being in the velodrome. It was the time I actually made it to the velodrome in Paris-Roubaix. Was in commentary, not in my 3 attempts riding it, but that's another story. And then my workshop at home, which is now my full-time job. Since COVID, I stopped with the commentary, and carbon repairs and jewellery, carbon, titanium, gold. Done a bit of platinum. It's a nightmare to work with, but yeah. So that's me in a nutshell, pretty much.
Nice. And you just touched on there about the funding, you know, coming through British Cycling, you know, through Boardman, and British Cycling becoming funded through the Olympics sort of thing. And like, how did it feel as someone came in before that? Like you said, you were laughed at school for cycling, and then it became something, you know, with the whole Wiggins thing and everything. Like, how did it feel to go through that era, living through it, like as an athlete?
It was a really nice change for us, going from. I've recently just rebuilt my Olympic bike from '96, So we were on our own bikes. It's a hand-built rally, steel frame, and the only thing we had team orientated with the bikes was we all had them painted the same colour, and that was it. Unfortunately, we chose exactly the same shade of blue as the Côte d'Azur. So in the team pursuit, the bikes just kind of blurred into the velodrome as we were going round, which probably helped us onto our 10th or 11th place maybe at the time. Basically, it enabled us to be able to focus on our sport. Vicky, my wife, was a swimmer. We met in Atlanta, and yes, those stories about the Olympic Village are true. But again, it enabled Vicky and the swimmers and all the Olympic sports to be able to, within reason, concentrate just on our sport and not have to worry too much about the noise around, about rent, where we're going to get our food from, how to pay. So it was a massive benefit to all the British athletes. The way it was implemented as well is another thing, because obviously cycling, I think, made the most of it pretty much as a sport, as we've seen the history books tell. Thanks to Peter Keane, who kind of was one of the instigators of the funding in the first place, and then obviously Dave Brailsford took that on and just found the staff, and he could have had twice the budget and not done half the things that we did if it wasn't implemented correctly. But so it was a little bit of both, but certainly the funding was a massive help.
Yeah, and during that era, like at the Sydney Olympics, I read that you were dabbling with like custom handlebars and all that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
so how does it feel going? You had an interest early on there with like tuning your setup. In an era where maybe like that wasn't. I don't know. You tell me.
A lot of athletes on the cycling side just kind of they concentrated on their training. And it was all about that, whereas I had a little bit of a different viewpoint. Obviously the training was quite important, but the equipment. And so my kind of fettling with carbon fibre go back now quarter of a century, 20 years, 25 years, so the bars that we had, I just didn't like them. I just didn't like the hand position, and the hand position is one of the key fundamentals of a time trial position.
What position was it like back then? Was that like
it was kind of it was the standard position, but the hands were kind of cocked upright. And when you do that, it affects, or it certainly affected my shoulders and my head position. So I altered that, and so I basically cut the things down and refabricated them. And so that was one of the things. And I remember Alex Dowsett coming in with the academy one day, absolutely piss wet through. They'd been out training. I says, "Oh, how's it gone?" He said, "All right." I said, "Well, why you been out in the wet training?" I've been in my shed making my bike faster, basically. And that's one of the ways that I went through it.
And you were just like you doing your own like carbon layups, where you like just tinkering around with a bit of epoxy and the sheets and stuff.
And then ironically, a friend of mine moved my bike. We were getting ready for World Championships, and it was just after the Olympics. And he leant my bike against the car, and it fell over in the wind, and one of the skis actually fell off. So I was very early in my use of wrapping carbon. Fortunately, I've learned a little bit more since then. But we kind of looked at each other and went, "Holy shit!" We were like a week away from that coming off in my hand at the Olympics. So yeah, when you look now, 2008, I went for a skin suit. I chatted to Boardman over the winter. We were doing all this wind tunnel testing, and I said, we're looking for all these gains to find tenths of a second over events that might only last, 9.5 seconds up to kind of 4 minutes. And I said, what about a road race? You're out there. For much larger. So I said, I'm going to wear a skin suit in the road race. And he laughed. He said, yeah, do it. And I can remember my first road race, or one of my very early road races, which was pretty much today. I think it was the Rutland Classic, which is on today. And we're on the start line, and some of the lads said, "Oh, what are you wearing a skin suit for? It's not a time trial, is it?" And I just looked back and said, "We'll wait and see, won't we?" and then narrower bars, filling in my helmet, levers. I extended the levers so that I could move my hands in. I mean, you've only got to look at the TV and the magazines now. They're all following exactly what I did. So I rest my case.
But it's interesting when you are an early adopter or a pioneer of these kind of things, people do scoff at you, don't. But then later on,
massively. And actually, it was the end of 2008. David Zabriskie, the American, who was probably one of the only pros at the time who could have got away with wearing a skin suit, and it was one of the very last races in the year, and he wore a skin suit. And I can remember phoning Dave saying, "Oh, I see Zabriskie wore a skin suit," and that was kind of, I whether it would have happened anyway without me, I doubt it. But hey, there you go. So yeah, it was kind of at the forefront of it, and we had one of the biggest pros, recently retired pro, in the wind tunnel with his it was a Pro Tour team, and we had his best setup. So it was a separate jersey and skin suit, but it was their race, it was their fast stuff. We ran a load of tests down at Southampton, and then we swapped it out for the Olympic skin suit, a helmet, filled-in helmet that was sat on top of his head. It just didn't fit right, but anyway. The gloves and the overshoes, and we found 22% gain over that, which it equated to about 5 bike lengths over 250 metres. Yeah. But you extrapolate that over a 3-week stage race, the gains were massive, and it was really, really exciting times to be in. And I think there probably still are gains out there, but they're getting smaller and smaller. It's now going to training and nutrition and stuff.
Nutrition's
massively come on.
What nutrition back in your day? What was that like? What were you eating? Fueling? Chocolate bar. There we go. It's on the title.
Chocolate bars. We had Nigel Mitchell come in, who then went to Team Sky, and he's on the pro scene now. So it was starting, but it was nothing like what they have now. It's incredible stuff now. Whether I would have the ability to stick to that kind of regime as a pro bike rider, I don't know. But ultimately that's the thing. It's there for the riders now to take. The pathway's there, the backing is there, but as an athlete, you still have to take it on board.
Exactly.
And take ownership.
And I think it's interesting is the type of athletes you get now, the more methodical, more like it's more regimented, set to what they want. Maybe back in the day it was a bit more free spirited, like it.
Your days of a peloton full of Julian Alaphilippe who just want to race have gone. Unfortunately for us, the viewers. But it has become more measured, and that was the thing with Team Sky. They took an event that had so many variables and placed it kind of in the same genre as a 1K time trial or an individual pursuit, where you could measure everything and you look at data. And sport is doing that in general. Our lad now, he's 15-year-old, he's on the rugby pitch. We look at it and we just see a blur of bodies, and it's like, well, how do they decide who is the player for this position? But he then gets, from Sale Shot, he then gets a sheet with all the data, and it's all there broken down, and we look at that and go, okay, I get that. It is measurable, and that's basically what Brailsford did with the Tour de France, and broke it down when Cav won the Worlds in 2011. Apart from the help of a filled-in helmet, which I designed him, Specialised absolutely shat their pants and produced something for him that wasn't as good as me, and was then used on the cover of the UCI manual of what not to do in the regs. They just broke it down to an event where it was a time trial, and they took the racing right out of it within reason from a spectacle point of view. It's
interesting what you say about. It seems like a lot of the areas, it's more individuals that are pushing, not the big brands.
Yeah, unfortunately, with big brands, what they tend to do, they will call themselves a performance brand. But what they're just a sales brand. Marketing brand. And it's all about the bottom line. So, for instance, Vicky's Speedo suit, the shark suit that came out, we know the girl who designed it and found the material for it. It was really expensive material. And Speedo came back in an early meeting and said, this is really, really good, but can we make this suit out of this material? Because their bottom line, it was around about $60 or $70 a unit, which when you extrapolate that over thousands and thousands of units, that's a massive difference of income.
Yeah.
But like she said, but then it's not that suit.
Yeah.
The whole point, and that was the good thing with the Secret Squirrel Club, was the fact that we weren't trying to look for margins in terms of sales. We were just trying to get quicker. So if it cost £500,000 to go a quarter of a second quicker over a lap, that's what we would chase, because it didn't matter. We weren't trying to put it in a shop window and sell it. That was the last thing they wanted to do, actually. They had to, because things had to be on the market in the end. So you can buy one of those bikes, apparently, if you're a genius on the internet and you've got loads of money.
Yeah. So how you just mentioned that Vicky, your wife there. How did your relationship, like, did you share like knowledge? Like you talked about the shark suit for swimming. Like, did your relationship together bring any sort of advancement in the sort of career knowledge?
It was a difficult one, because what would normally happen, Vicky's alarm would go off at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and she'd get up and go training, and I wouldn't even budge. And then
So you're the night owl.
Then she'd come in from training, wake me up. I'd get up and have breakfast and go and do my training, and then by the time I came back, I'd wake her up and she'd have to go and do her afternoon session. So I think you were all right with swimming, weren't you, until you realised what sport could be, and cyclists didn't have to go up and down the same lane, counting the same tile one after another. You know, I could within reason go wherever if we was training on the road.
If the pools were as good as these pools here, like maybe
your eyes are more coming in here.
I'm booking this for next party.
Yeah.
It's going to take a week to fill the thing, but yeah, it's. I think that's one of the things, is it's more the mindset than obviously the physicalities of swimming up a pool. If your technique's off in the pool, that's it. Whereas Chris Froome proved you didn't need a good technique to go fast on a bike. But the mindset of kind of post-training, pre-event, that kind of thing, the lifestyle of that was a massive help. In my point of view, I'm sure you probably have other views on that, but she agreed.
Yeah, it means get you.
So we got that on camera.
So I'm just going to move on to your career, sort of summarising, like what you mentioned, you're Olympic medalist, world champion. Like, what were your favourite victories in your career, and like what stick with you? I've got here down like the Madison with Cavendish. Like, what, how was he like to work with as well as a partner?
I mean, that was an interesting one, because it was 2005 LA, and just prior to those Worlds, I was due to ride with Geraint Thomas, who he went on to be pretty good as well. But we were due to ride in the Madison, which was 2 days after the team pursuit, and then he had an accident I think they were in Australia at the time, and he basically had to have his spleen out. And so Rod Ellingworth, I remember Rod phoning me saying, "G's out, I'm afraid, but you're going to ride with Cav." And I was like, "Who?" He said, the little bald one who drags around the car park in his whatever it was that he had, Corsa. It's like, okay, well, look, it is what it is, but whatever, it'd be fine. And it was fine, it was all right.
Yeah.
He rode so his first senior event at world level at the World was the scratch race. And he finished 4th. And he was gutted. He was absolutely gutted.
Does he take defeat badly?
Well, put it this way, when I was working with him, he bought a pool table. And he had this pool table in his house, and we played 5 games, And I thought, right, I was 5-0 up. I thought, I've got to let him win one. So I did. So it finished 5-1. 2 years after that, never ever played it again.
Wow.
So yeah, he doesn't like losing.
Wow.
Doesn't like losing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. But so he was absolutely gutted to get fourth. And then we'd won the team pursuit that year on our 14th. It was my 14th Worlds of trying. So, but he was desperate, and before the race, I said, "Come on in, let's get you a medal." And we did.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. And he was riding for a German team at the time, and some of the 6-day lads said that they saw the result and they saw that we won on 0 points, but we were a lap up, and they thought, it must have been a heat. They won the heat, and then they realised it was the final, and they were like, Cavendish? Yeah. But of course, he went on to win quite a little bit more.
Yeah.
Quite a bit more than that. But I do remember I think it was his 3rd pro victory on the road. It was T-Mobile at the time, and I spoke to him and I said, bloody hell, Cav, I knew you were going to win some races, but not just yet. And he just said, I did. That was it. He
Brilliant.
knew. So yeah, he's an angry little bugger.
That's crazy. That's great, isn't it?